Pros and cons. Today we're going through the good and the bad of living here in South Florida. So let's get into it right now. If we haven't met before, my name's Larry Mastropieri. I'm the broker owner of the Mastropieri Group based right here in South Florida. And we get calls from people like yourself every day who are thinking about making the move down here to South Florida. So whether you're moving sooner or later, don't hesitate to give me a call, ask me anything you want, send me an email, shoot me a text. We'd love to be the ones to help you find that perfect home here in South Florida. And don't forget, give us a like. Subscribe if you want more content like this. Now let's get into the pros and cons. All right, let's talk about the first con, the big elephant in the room, the big question everyone asks when they're moving or relocating to the area. It's the weather. The weather sounds great. The weather also sounds a little scary in some seasons. Hurricanes tend to make the news a lot across the country. So let's get into the hurricane experience here in South Florida, and this will be our first con. Hurricane season starts on June 1st and ends on November 30th. But in my opinion, the sweet spot for the maximum amount of storms or the worst storms are in September and August every year. That's when the water is really warm and the storms tend to be a lot more frequent and more intense, in my opinion. The big concerns with hurricanes is the winds, the flooding, and the storm surge. The extent of your hurricane exposure can really depend on your location here in South Florida. For example, if you live east of 95, your exposure can be much more serious than living out west. Historically, South Florida has been hit with some major hurricanes like Andrew, which was a Cat 5 in 1992, but more recently, the big hurricanes have hit other parts of Florida. In my opinion, hurricanes are serious and they can be a real concern. But if you're prepared and you know what to do and you act prudently, I think everything is very simple and easy to handle. I'm not going to make this a hurricane prep talk, but real quick, what I mean by acting prudently and being prepared is have a plan and also have your house kind of pre-prepared for hurricane season. Make sure you have shutters or impact glass or at least plywood and the right materials ready to go. Don't be running around last minute looking for screws at Home Depot, buying wood, buying water, not having a plan of where you will go if you need to evacuate. Get all that squared away in advance. Make sure you trim your trees before hurricane season. Make sure you don't have a tree next to your house that's just like ready to fall or asking to fall on your house. Get all that cleaned up and prepared right now, and everything will go very smoothly. The year-round warm weather is a huge pro for South Florida, and it creates an incredible lifestyle and experience for the residents that live here. During the summer, the weather gets to about, on average, 90 degrees. It's pretty hot, pretty humid. They tend to have a lot of thunderstorms and some rain. And then during the winter, it's pretty dry, and it's about 75 degrees on average, which is amazing. South Florida's subtropical to tropical climate has a 7-month-long wet season from April to October, but only a quarter of the yearly rainfall takes place during the dry season from November to March. And here's a little taste of the experiences that the warm weather here in South Florida creates. To start, some people call Fort Lauderdale the yacht capital of the world. 50,000 boats call Fort Lauderdale home. That's a huge number. 2,000 super yachts move through Fort Lauderdale annually. And the marine industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry here in Fort Lauderdale. There's so many reasons why this makes sense. The warm water, the warm weather creates an environment where any water activity is really an option. You can scuba dive. There's so many reefs and wrecks in the area. You can go fishing. You can take a trip over to the Bahamas very quickly. You can go down to the Florida Keys. It's simply incredible. You can do almost anything you want on the water here. Scuba diving and snorkeling are incredible here. South Florida has the largest collection of warm water wrecks in the Western Hemisphere. And another pastime or sport that the warm weather allows for year-round is golf. There's well over 1,000 golf courses in South Florida. Many top golfers live in South Florida, specifically Jupiter. And to add on to the weather pro, the beaches are incredible here. They're available year-round. They're a lot of fun. They're really nice. There's a ton to choose from, and you could simply pick your favorite. Because the weather's nice, people want to go out. They want to enjoy themselves. They want to see what's happening in the downtown areas. They want to walk outside, enjoy the weather, listen to some live music, maybe bar hop, go grab some food at a nice restaurant. This is all going on here in South Florida, unlike, I assume, what's happening in maybe Chicago or New York in January. I'm sure the atmosphere outside in the downtowns look very different. I briefly mentioned the rain, so this is another kind of con, if you will. The rain comes fast and it comes hard. The weather changes instantaneously sometimes down here. It turns into a thunderstorm, lightning storm with a ton of rain coming down right in the middle of maybe your day or right at the end of your day. But I'd take this over having a long, dreary, rainy day. I'd take these short bursts of rain any day. But a lot of people don't know how to operate when they get caught in these rainstorms, especially when they're driving. So first thing to know as a newbie here in South Florida, when you're driving on the highway or driving and you get caught in this rainstorm, please don't put your four-way blinkers on. That's not the way to operate when you're driving in a really tough rainstorm. Just operate as normal, slow down a little bit, drive safely, or get to a place where you can pull off. Population growth and density. So in the area, we've experienced a boom in population, more so than we've been in the past years. In fact, Florida is the #1 state in the country for population growth. So there are a ton of people moving here, and we are feeling the impacts of that. And a lot of people here locally who have been here for a long, long time don't really love it. So they would consider this a big con. Now, personally, I really like the density and the population growth. I think there's a lot of value to that, but others don't. So that's why I'm bringing it up as a con. And obviously the density varies depending on where you are here in South Florida. Obviously Miami is very different from, for example, Boca Raton in Palm Beach County. So Miami's this massive city, the biggest city here in South Florida, with a lot of construction and a lot going on. And Boca Raton is a smaller, call it suburb city here in South Florida, but it is also experiencing a lot of construction and a big population growth. But more population growth and density means increased traffic, which is a big factor, and increased construction to roads and other inconveniences that a lot of people in a specific area could bring. The value add to population growth and density is that it brings more action. It brings a lot of stuff to the area. Businesses tend to do better because there's more people in the area that need more things. Restaurants are opened. Activities are added, amenities in the area increase. So you get to experience all that when you have this population growth and this population boom, which is what I really value. And I believe because of the increased diversity and the increased population over the past decade or two, we have this interesting combination of this laid-back world, this laid-back environment, because it is a destination location, it is a vacation area, combined with this hustle culture, this entrepreneurial spirit here in South Florida. So you can pretty much live here, be whoever you want, do whatever you want, and it's just a great mix of many different ideologies in this area. And this is part of what attracted me to South Florida and what kept me here for so long, for the past 20 years. I really wanted to come to South Florida because of the warm weather and the cool environment. But then when I got here, I really appreciated the fact that I could work really hard like I did when I was growing up in New Jersey. And also at the end of the day or on this one day on the weekend, I can jump on a boat or go scuba diving or do something really cool that you could really only do in the tropics. So I got to live this like hustle lifestyle during the week and maybe on the weekends too. And then when I took my break, I really could maximize the enjoyment. Now, traffic is a con. I don't think there's any way to put a silver lining on traffic. Traffic has increased dramatically, one, because of the construction to the roads, so it creates a little bit more chaos, but also just the amount of people. There's just a lot of people for the infrastructure here. I think Florida is doing a good job of managing it, and the infrastructure is great and improving further, but it's still pretty crazy on the roads out here. Another big factor regarding traffic and your experience on the road down here that makes it a little crazy is you have all walks of life, all demographics. You have all ages, all populations from around the country and around the world driving here in one area, which makes things a little crazy. Everybody has a different style of driving, and that all combined together makes things chaotic. Another downside to population growth and density, especially when it happens in such a short period of time, is the demand for real estate goes up ridiculously and the inventory drops off quite a bit. And so we're in a low inventory market right now with a pretty strong demand still. And we can't add that many new homes to the area because we have limitations. We have the ocean on one side and we have the Everglades on the other. So we can't build outward infinitely. And the cost to build new homes are pretty expensive. So by default, prices for homes have gone up a lot recently. And because we can't add new homes, those new homes are very expensive as well. So the price or the cost of living has increased dramatically here in the area in recent years as well. So things have become more costly because the population growth has been so strong here in the area. In fact, a lot of clients of ours that we list homes for that want that old Florida feel that they had 30, 40 years ago when they moved to, for example, Boca Raton, they're looking for places in St. Lucie County and Martin County now to get that same feel. So people from this area that are older that want that feel that they originally bought into are changing their location, and usually a younger home buyer is picking up that new home that we're selling for them. Florida is flat. There are no mountains here, really. I would really like it if Florida could just add some mountains because then I think this would be the perfect place ever. But the reality is there's no mountains here, and that's a con. The highest natural point in South Florida is 86 feet at Hobe Mountain in John Dickinson State Park, which is a really cool park, but that doesn't really count as a mountain. Now, I probably should have put this one higher on the list. Florida is a 0% income tax state, which is very appealing to people living in other parts of the country that are getting taxed a lot, like New York as an example. So despite the fact that the cost of living is relatively higher here in South Florida, this tends to offset the cost for some people. That's why a lot of people are moving their wealth here to the area. Next con is home construction. Home construction down here in South Florida is different from the rest of the country. Almost all new construction here in South Florida has been built using concrete block recently. And historically, there's been a lot of concrete block construction as well. It tends to hold up really well in the weather, like the hurricanes as an example. And the cost to build concrete block homes is much more than wood frame, which is used in many other parts of the country. The fact that South Florida is a tourist destination has its pluses and minuses for sure. The major con is the population almost doubles during the winter months here because people from other parts of the country, other parts of the world are trying to escape the cold weather and they come to our area for the warm weather, and it creates a lot of traffic and some inconveniences in the area, like you can barely get into a restaurant, if at all, during that season. And just for your reference, the season is typically considered November 1st until the end of May. Another con that I've heard from people that moved to the area from other parts of the country over the years is that they feel like because there's such a transient population in their specific neighborhood that they don't have a tight-knit community. And I'd say that's probably neighborhood specific, but it's something that everyone should watch out for or consider when they're thinking about buying here in the area. I think the major pro and the big takeaway from any discussion related to tourism and the transient population is that people from out of the area are bringing a lot of money to our area and they're spending it. And they're spending it in local businesses, in the downtowns, and this is improving our area dramatically. It's adding to the amount of amenities and things we have access to down here, and the local residents get to take advantage of this and enjoy it. Property insurance. For many reasons, property insurance is not cheap in South Florida, and a lot of the buyers we work with from out of the area get sticker shock once we go into this discussion about property insurance. So let's talk a little bit about it. So in most cases down here, insurance and the insurance process is different from other parts of the country. In most cases, buyers will go to an insurance broker. They'll get their inspection done. They'll get their inspection reports. They'll provide those to the insurance broker. And then the insurance broker will shop different insurance providers for the best rate or the best options and then provide those to the buyer. The broker exists because insurance providers tend to come in and out of the market down here depending on their risk tolerance level or how much insurance policies they've written recently. So that's important to know because typically you're not going with your classic Geico who can bundle your home and auto insurance together. That typically doesn't happen here in most cases. So the recap of this topic is insurance isn't that cheap here in South Florida, and it's not super easy to execute on when you're a buyer here as well. But we're very skilled at making it work, so don't hesitate to reach out to us if you're looking to buy here in South Florida. And if you want more information on the insurance topic specifically, hit the subscribe button, give me a like, and go check out our channel. It's all about living here in South Florida. If you don't like gated communities, you don't like HOAs, there are a lot of those here in the area. So it's a little bit more tricky sometimes to find you that non-HOA or non-gated community, but we work with you. We make it happen. I live in a non-gated, non-HOA community right now, and I actually like that as well. So this is a con if you hate them. This is a pro if you love them. South Florida is pretty developed, but there is still a handful of wildlife running around that could cause issues in your day-to-day life. So let's start with number one. First, don't let your animals, dogs, cats, whatever, play with toads or frogs in the backyard. Some of these frogs and toads can be poisonous and will kill your animal. Number two, let's prevent or avoid our children and our animals from playing next to or going into any fresh or brackish bodies of water because alligators exist here and so do crocodiles in some areas of South Florida. And in some rare cases, they will eat your animals and they will eat your kids. So let's avoid that. This is a fun fact. The Everglades here in Florida is the only place on earth that has both alligators and crocodiles in the same environment. And the third wildlife concern that I'll bring up is spiders and snakes. There's some spiders that are poisonous here in South Florida. I've seen people get bit by them, and that kind of sucks. The outcome isn't great in some cases. They get some issues on their skin and or have to go to the hospital, and same with snakes. So just watch out for them and you'll be okay. The fourth question / concern I get is mosquitoes and just bugs in general flying around. I don't really think there's a big concern about bugs here in South Florida. They're not really annoying. In most cases, everything's cool and there's no problems. Now, if your neighbor or you have some like small little standing body of water in an area of your property or their property, well, then mosquitoes are going to breed and it's going to get crazy and they're going to be biting you. So you got to watch out for that. So they will breed very easily, but generally speaking, in most of the properties I've spent time at and sold here in South Florida, I have not had like a major bug issue. Like in some areas of Florida, they say you really want a screen and enclosure around the back of your property to protect yourself from bugs. Here in South Florida, there's not a whole lot of screen and enclosures. Like it's not as common as it is in some other parts of Florida. And I think that's because it's not really that big of a deal or it's not really needed as much. There's not as much bugs flying around bugging you here in our area. Now that I've listed off all these scary things about living in South Florida regarding the nature, I really want to highlight all the amazing things and how incredible the nature here is in South Florida. And we'll start by talking about the Everglades. The Everglades is a natural gem to be cherished and protected, and most people aren't aware of its importance. The Everglades covers 1.5 million acres. It's the largest subtropical wetland in North America, and the Everglades is the largest wilderness of any kind east of the Mississippi River. The Everglades ecosystem is home to 36 endangered and threatened species. In fact, it's home to the Florida panther, which is one of the most endangered species on Earth. There's currently less than 100 in existence. The Everglades National Park is the third largest national park in the lower 48 states, and nearly 8 million Florida residents rely on the Everglades for their daily water supply. The Everglades National Park protects the southern 20% of the Everglades drainage basin. What's really cool is there are over 100 miles of water trails in the park, so there's so many things you can do if you go visit. So the takeaway here is that South Florida has a ton of nature, and unique nature at that, to enjoy, not to be scared of. So this is a huge pro on the list. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you found a ton of value in this video. If you're learning about South Florida, then you should hit the subscribe button to get more content just like this. Check out our videos on the other cities here in South Florida, and we'll see you on the next one.